Okay, EVE Online pilots, I'm going to show you how to move a Bustard around high sec, and it also applies to low sec, but I wouldn't put a Bustard in low sec unless I could get a 100% guarantee that I can get into warp without being decloaked for more than a second at least. So, alright, this is the fitting. Lots of cargo, so I can hold all this. 27,000 up to 30.6. There are ships that do larger than that. The Bustard has +2 to its warp stab, but anything more than that, of course, more than 3 points or 2 scrams is going to catch you on that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the MWD and the cloak. First the cloak, then the MWD. Align, cloak, MWD. And as soon as that MWD cycle is completely, it's going to recognize it's cloaked. And then I'm going to decloak and warp. So here I go. Okay, decloak, warp. Alright, so it's that close. Starts that close to my actual warp. Has to go maybe 3 or 4 seconds. So that's basically 3 or 4 seconds of lockability. You can be locked. And if you're locked, you're scrammed, you're not getting out. Now also, if you're uncloaked, you can be bumped. So please keep that in mind. Bumping is as big a deal as being scrammed or anything else. So I was not lockable until that last pit when I decloaked and said warp. Now if I had some implants, I could definitely get into warp before anyone could lock me. I'd be in warp instantly. So implants can really help. There are a lot of different implants other people are talking about. I'm not going to go into it. I can also put in inertia stabilizers, and if I went through low sec, I would definitely not fit for maximum capacity here. I would have at least 2, probably 3, maybe 4 inertia stabilizers, whatever I could get away with in here. Alright, so here's my next system. Now I'm going to show you what happens if I click warp 2 and then cloak. Warp 2, cloak. What do you know? Can't do that while warping. So, don't be surprised and then be ganked by a pirate and go, oh crap, it's all someone else's fault. It doesn't work. So this is what happens when you click warp, you can't cloak. When you click align, you can use the cloak trick. Okay, and that applies also to jump and dock. This is like 3 instructions. It's like align, warp, and jump. 3 instructions in one that are being sent sequentially. Okay, so to use these techniques, we're going to use the align, and I'm going to now show you. Just a moment. Alright, so thanks to that distraction, I'm now decloaked. I'm going to go ahead and do the align to, micro warp drive, and then cloak. Now, with the micro warp drive on for that probably 1 second, it makes it so that if a player does react, before I actually push the cloak, and that's probably maybe a half a second or a second, and they actually do try to click on my ship, they can probably lock it in a second or less, maybe half a second. Because I have that micro warp drive on, the signature radius of this whole ship becomes very large, and so it can be locked very quickly. So there's a risk associated with doing these two. Now, getting off a gate is also very useful. So if you want to get off a gate, you can simply use the micro warp drive to limit your time on the gate to no more than 10 seconds. You wouldn't use a cloak in that case unless, of course, you could go into warp immediately after the cloak. Now, if there's someone on the gate, you might do that. If there's no one on the gate, it doesn't really matter to cloak unless maybe they're watching as, cloaky watching. I'm going to go ahead and grab some stuff here. Just a second. Alright, so I just added some tritanium to my cargo hold, and I'm continuing on the rest of my journey. I'm going to show you now what happens when you're in a station and you undock. You're going to undock for greater than the speed required to warp, which is great if you're going straight. But there's this thing called align that you have to do in addition to the speed. So I'm going to go to Noma, and I'm going to go to align, and I'm going to use my micro warp drive to align there faster. typically, using your micro warp drive will limit the amount of time to 10 seconds. And let's see. It says I'm in warp. I have I'm 100% speed that I need, thanks to that MWD, but I'm not aligned. And in fact, aligning out of a station can take a lot longer than 10 seconds. I'm not sure exactly why, but trying to use this trick in a station when you undock from a station is impossible. You're already at 0 at the station usually, so you can't cloak, and this doesn't do anything for your alignment just because of the it gives you the speed, but it doesn't help with the alignment. So in general, don't use this because it actually does increase the alignment time by a little bit. It increases your mass by a lot. Especially useful to know if you're going through wormholes or you're using other jump devices like you know, the nullsec jump bridges. So those require fuel, and the more mass you have, the more fuel you're going to spend in them. Also with Black Ops, if you're doing any kind of bridging, that requires fuel for your mass. Okay, so we've jumped into Garrus, and so I'm going to show you now the use of just the micro warp drive. I'm not sure if I've shown that yet, so I'm going to do jump micro warp drive, and that's about the amount of time you should wait. When I set it, that's about when I clicked on it. Jump micro warp drive. It might be about, and I pushed it when I said the M on micro warp drive, so that might be like a second. And then of course you have to actually stop it. You have to stop it, and then your time is limited to 10 seconds. You can see it took over 20 seconds by itself with the MWD on. So things to remember as you try these techniques, mistakes that people usually make when they do it, I'm kind of showing you here. Letting the MWD cycle more than once. To prevent that, simply push it and then push it again so that it turns red, and you see it flashing red as it goes around. That means it's only going to do one cycle. Now, if you do this technique and you use the cloak MWD, but then after the MWD stops, you wait, your speed is going to be continually slowing down because the MWD is not on anymore. That's going to increase the amount of time it takes for you to get back into warp. So let's try that. We're going to go align, not warp. So these are mistakes people commonly make of actually doing like warp 2. We're going to go align, cloak, MWD, turn it off, or actually that's just a good habit. So the cloak slows down your speed by the amount that it says. Now notice my speed is continuing to slow if I keep that cloak on and I don't actually go into warp. So now it's going to take that much longer for me to get back up to my warp speed, which is right here. This cloak will slow down my speed by 75%. Now if you get a cloaking device that's less than that, you're going to be in a much bigger advantage. So 75%, and then if I click the MWD after that, it's going to take my 75% speed, so that's 75% of my 93.1, and then it's going to take that speed and it's going to multiply it by its boost, which is that's for the signature radius bonus, 500%, 600%. So it's going to take my minus 75%, it's going to multiply it by 600%. And that'll be the maximum speed for this if it actually gets to the maximum before it stops in its 10 seconds, which it may, depending on your implants and which you have fitted to your ship, your inertia stabilizers. So I'm going to go ahead and jump. And then we'll try it again. Okay, so we're doing align, cloak, MWD. We turn it off, and just as this comes out, we're going to decloak and warp. Okay, so let's try it. Decloak, warp. Okay, so kind of close. It's going to take a while. With inertia stabilizers, you can, and the implants, you can get it to where it warps immediately after. And if it does, there's no time they can lock onto you, because as soon as you appear, you disappear. You click a line appear, cloak, disappear. They won't be able to start locking on you. And then as soon as you finish the cycle, you decloak and warp instantly. So you can get that down. You do sacrifice some of your cargo space, but hey, I mean, can you haul more in a Bustard with 3 inertia stabilizers than in a crane? I mean, that's the question. If you can, then obviously it's worth it, because it does give that +2 to the warp stabilizer as well. And I'm gonna see if maybe I can I like to use this 10 MN when there are no wars and I'm only on high sec, just to make it so that I can warp out faster, because I don't like to spend a lot of time traveling. So typically I don't use that cloak. It's nice to have it when I need it, obviously, if I have to use that trick. But I just say warp to 0 or jump, and then I double click this, and it'll have me out of there in 10 seconds. So, you know, you may not seem like it, but the time saved in getting into warp is a lot. It's definitely very noticeable. Okay, so when we actually get there, I'm going to switch it out, put in a few inertia stabilizers, and then show you what you can do without implants. Alright, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and compare the Bustard versus the crane for moving in low sec. Alright, so you want to use the cloak MWD trick. I've got it fitted up here with 3 inertia stabilizers, which I'll show you how that works when I get to the destination. The ship's still traveling. And I've got the crane fitted up with the cargo and a covert cloak. Now, in here we're going to go ahead and put in some medium shield extenders. Let's try it. Let's see, what's the fitting looking like? Let's see. Actually, it can fit. It looks like a large shield extender. Now, you might be thinking, why aren't I putting in an afterburner or micro warp drive? And sometimes I do, but it's not really so important with the crane unless you're going through null sec. You have to get out of bubbles. So, bubbles, definitely consider it. Here, let me put an FS to lower the power grid. Okay, so power grid's still an issue. Just trying to get the fitting right now. Second. Alright, well, we'll fit an afterburner anyways. Just kind of show the difference between the two. Shield hit points. Crane has 6,000 or 2,600 less shields than the Bustard. Its armor is, of course, less. Its structure is less, so it's easier to break. More fragile. Let's see, we do have the afterburner, but we don't really usually use that. And let's see, cargo hold. It can hold 9,400 cubic meters. And the Bustard with the 3 inertia stabs holds 14,000. So it's definitely more, but not that much more. Certainly not twice as much. If we put that 4th inertia stabilizer in there, notice it's now just barely above the crane. So it's about the same thing. Maybe a little bit more tank, which doesn't even matter if you can keep yourself cloaked, which is the whole point of these inertia stabilizers and the improved cloak and the MWD. Okay, but the Bustard does have the option of refitting in times where it doesn't need all those inertia stabilizers, so they can hold a lot more than a crane. So that's the one big advantage, and it does have the +2 to its warp out. So that's another medium advantage anyhow. It doesn't matter if you're in a warp bubble, and well, I guess it would matter if you're going through low sec and some people have plastered a gate with no, if a gate's been plastered with jet cans so you can't cloak, this is obviously a very big disadvantage. So the extra tank might help you to get back to the gate to jump back through, or if there are few enough ships, you could try actually a warp out and hope your +2 is enough to let you warp out before anyone can get you. That's assuming you can't cloak. These are just scenarios that you may find yourself in if you travel through low sec or you travel through null sec. Okay, so the last part of this is going to be showing the use of I'm going to do 3 inertia stabilizers, and showing how that gets you into warp instantly after you use the cloak, MWD, decloak, and then warp. Okay, so we're almost there. I'm going to go ahead and pause this until we get there, so you don't have to actually wait out the time. Alright, so we're at the destination. We have refitted the Bustard with 3 inertia stabilizers and 14.7 cubic meters. Remember that the crane can hold 9.4 cubic meters and warp instantly. Cloaked, actually. Warp cloaked. So it doesn't even have to decloak to warp. Alright, so this is the Bustard. Now, the Bustard has a lot more time for aligning than a crane does. So a crane can move around very quickly. It can align and warp out of stations and other places very quickly. So we're going to go ahead and have it warp out to a planet. So here's the warp out time with 3 stabilizers. That's obviously quite a bit of time. A crane has a little bit less hit points than this, but it warps out a lot faster, from a station anyways. And if you're going to be doing deliveries and transporting things between stations, you're going to see that a lot coming out of a station. Okay, so that was the Bustard. Now, you also notice that the crane warps at 9 AU per second, the Bustard at 3 AU per second, so much slower. It's just, I don't know, some people maybe they like the Bustard more than the crane for some philosophical reason. I only like it for the 30,000 when it's not inertia stabbed and just moving it through high sec without any war targets or any wars or anything, where it's completely safe. Otherwise, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Alright. So, from a stop, we're going to go ahead and warp to another planet. It's just as if we went through a Stargate, except we would be cloaked right now. So, what we're going to do is the cloak and then MWD. So, we're going to go to this planet. We're going to simply align, cloak, MWD. As soon as that finishes, we'll decloak and we'll warp to at 0. So, there's at least 10 seconds while you're in the gate cloaked. Decloak, warp. And you notice instantly we go into warp. So with 3 inertia stabilizers, that's enough to instantly go into warp. And that's without any implants. If you want to put in implants, that's obviously going to increase your it's going to increase your align speed. So looking at E-fitting tool, we get the align time down to under 12 seconds, and it's obviously good. Actually, no, we only use 3. So you get the align time under 12.7 seconds, you're good. Now you can try it out if you're under 14.4 seconds. Try it out and see, hey, does this work? Can I get an insta warp with only 2? And depending on your skills, depending on your implants, you might be able to. Now, since it is under 12, I don't need this MWD. Okay, let me change that. If I'm not going to use the cloak, I won't need the MWD, because the MWD, actually, nope, wrong on that one. If I can get this align time to under 10 seconds, I wouldn't need the MWD, because the MWD would just slow it down. So, yeah, alright. I was trying to get out there is once you can get it under 10. Now, if you notice, the crane is already at 7.4, and it doesn't even have anything benefiting implants or align time in the low slots. So at 7.4 seconds, MWD is certainly not going to help at all. You'll never need to use that to increase your time or decrease your time to warp, increase your rate at getting into warp. Okay, so I think that's enough of showing moving around in a Bustard, comparing it to a crane. Obviously the other races are similar, but the ships are a little bit different, but basically the same concept. Okay, I hope you enjoy your traveling, and I think I've covered enough for one day. Talk to you guys later. And please do a +1 on this video. Thanks, bye.